got fired from that company, and I sure was glad that I dug that well before I was thirsty, because then it was real. I was out on my own. First week was rough, right?
Yeah.
Second week, I made more money that week than I would have if I would have had a job. And
Okay.
I came home Friday evening and I said to my wife, I don't want to go to that job interview. Can I not? Are you okay with me not? And she said, sure. And it was a scary time, but we never looked back. It was the best decision ever.
Hola, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Reliable HVACR podcast. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed, like, comment, all that good stuff. If you guys are listening to this on the audio podcast, wherever you listen to it, please leave a review, get this show out to more people. And if you guys are watching and listening, I truly appreciate it. We would not be here without you. Now, on that point, the first sponsor of the podcast, my favorite CRM, Jobber. Now with Jobber, we can do professional invoicing and quoting, at its base, but it has so many more features. You can schedule, which we use for reoccurring maintenance. So every 6 months, this thing will remind the customer. There's so much more you can do to message customers, set up reminders, set up scheduling. You can do more with checking in and out. You have price lists. You have tons and tons of features. If you guys need help organizing your business and helping it run smoother, it's been night and day for us. We came from paper invoices. I looked at or into other softwares, and there's a lot of complaints on other ones, and one of the big ones is affordability. Now with Jobber, they have really great prices. I promise you, they have something for anybody starting and needs just the basics, and then as you grow, you can get into these much bigger plans, and it grows with your business. So if you guys are interested in looking more professional, being more organized, it helps me get these invoices and billing out much quicker. In turn, we get paid quicker. So if you guys are interested, I can get you a free trial and discount if you go to getjobber.com/reliable HVACR. And another sponsor of the channel now is VETO. VETO Pro Pack, hands down, my favorite tool bags. Now, you guys have seen me rock a whole bunch of VETO bags, and I have nothing but good things to say. If you ever have any issues with them, they do have a 5-year warranty, but the quality is there. You're going to hear me say that a lot about VETO Pro Pack, is the quality, the different kinds of bags, and the thought process that goes into each of these bags. Now that I've seen how they design them and the stuff they're thinking of putting out, all the new stuff that comes out, like they really want to cover every aspect or every need of any technician across many different skill trades. Whether you're a tech that carries a laptop, you need a lot of power tools or a lot of hand tools, like they have a bag for you. Just some of the best bags I've ever had, because I used to rip a lot of the other brands you see at the supply houses or that were there forever. And now VETO Pro Pack, second to none, never had an issue. Go check them out. All right. Today we have a great guest. We have Joshua Griffin. If you're not familiar with him, I've gotten a chance to kind of get to know him. He hops in on my channel, my live streams, and then I've gone over and I enjoy the stuff that he does on his channel. So his YouTube channel is the HVAC Home Guide for Homeowners, but it's not what you think it is. It might be directed to help homeowners with the news on their systems, what's coming out, refrigerants, things like that. And I think that's beneficial for techs too, right? Talks about the new refrigerants coming in, the old refrigerants being phased out, inverters, new systems coming out, stuff like that. I find it interesting personally. And then he does do a little bit of the watch out for this, watch out for that, don't get scammed for this or that. There's bad apples in this trade, and I'm not going to defend that. it's good that he's putting the word out, the news out there. I find it interesting. Like I said, go check out his YouTube channel. I know he's starting to do more social media stuff. We'll get into all that because he did own a business, run a business. You know, he came up in the trades and then decided to sell his business. So we'll go over that too, how he's doing social media, all this other stuff. So this is Joshua Griffin of Griffin Air, also the new HVAC guide for homeowners YouTube channel. So without further ado, give him a nice howdy welcome and enjoy the show. Josh, how are you doing, man? How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty great. I've had a good year so far and staying busy.
I was talking to a couple guys over here in Virginia, and things are slow for a lot of these guys. I wouldn't know now, and we could talk about that later. But yeah,
Yeah, like
things are a
what
little
kind
slow
of
right now.
what kind of weather do you guys get? Like, is it cool out?
It's cool, but we had a couple days last week that we reached almost 70 degrees. And so it's not like cold. It's not cold enough to make people miserable and pick up that phone.
Yeah, we're like in that middle. It's weird here. I don't know. Maybe it's the same over there. Like it's like 50 at night and then like 70 during the day. Like it feels even hotter because of the sun beating down.
Uh-huh.
And we're getting into that warm part of it, but it's like right around the corner, right? It's like 70 and then like it wants to get hot, but not quite. So for us, we do a lot of maintenance around this time. So I'm getting like backed up with maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little chillier than that here. We're probably during the day mid-50s. On a good day, and then some days around 45 to 50 degrees is going to be your day temperature. So it does get a little chilly at night, but
Well, yeah, to me that's cold.
yeah. And I agree, but for some reason a lot of the companies we've been talking to have been slow. So
And that's something I get asked about a lot, right? Because like technically this is for most people the slow season, right? Unless you got really cold weather where you're doing all those heating calls. You guys, the guys on the East Coast that do a lot of the boiler stuff and all that. Like those guys stay busy with HVAC all the time, right?
right.
But like I just said, we're doing maintenance, so I book all my maintenance stuff. So I have right now I'm doing ice machines, so that's the big thing right now in the hospitals that we're at. So they want all their ice machines serviced. I have like 22 to get through, and
Wow.
those I don't know if you've ever done any kind of refrigeration, but that can be grueling. Everybody's least favorite, well, nonetheless, maintenance, but like ice machines, right?
Yeah.
Because those you disassembling them, emptying out the bin, running all that ice machine cleaner. You're there for a few hours if you're doing it the right way. And I got 22 of those to do right now.
I can only imagine. So
So
how long does it take you to do one ice machine?
if I'm like really on it, I mean, it'll only take me like these specifically will only take me a couple hours. Being multiple floors on a hospital, there's a little bit of me trying to figure out where the hell they are. For one, because I haven't serviced these in a long time. Their maintenance crew wanted to do them after a while, so then like we stopped doing them for a few years, and now they're like, I don't know why, but they're like, now can you take care of them again? So there I am, like with my little iPad trying to walk around and be like, is there an ice machine over here? Is there one? Like I'm asking everybody because I have like 22 to find and I don't know where the hell they are. I don't remember where they are. So like it's a couple hours to do the maintenance and then like add an hour just finding the damn machine.
That's funny. They're hiding on you.
Yeah, man, and it's some people don't like it, some people do. My brother's okay with it because I kind of stick him with all the maintenance stuff. He's been a good sport about that because I really don't like it.
Yeah.
I actually had some calls come in this week, even though I'm backed up on ice machines, and I was like, oh, thank God, I can kind of step away from the maintenance and go do some real calls because there was a bunch of like old walk-ins that needed to be fixed. And I get more excited for that than doing maintenance, but maintenance pays the bills. It keeps us busy in the slow season. So like after this, I have about 18 to 20 stores that need AC maintenance, and I'm going to be up on roofs doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that time of year for sure. Um, I think that's part of the sauce, right? The secret sauce is trying to figure out ways to stay busy when it's quote unquote off season. And I always when I had my business, I would always gauge how well the business was doing in the off season. I didn't care how well it was doing in the on season. A lot of guys only care about that because they look at the numbers and they'll that's when you're making your money. But I always knew it was time to hire somebody if we were staying too busy in the off season, because who wants to hire somebody in the on season just to have to lay them off,
Yeah, we've done that too. Like I've been getting asked recently too about hiring and stuff, and I'm like, well, I hate to evaluate us when we're at our busiest, right? It's like, yeah, you could use the help and all that, but then what happens when those calls get done, right? It's like, do we have enough work for you to keep you? Because then, like, if not, you got to start laying off people. So, did you go into that whole maintenance thing too? Did you have maintenance agreements and all that?
We did, but my company was 85, if not 95% residential. So we had
Yeah,
a couple of commercial customers. We did nothing on rooftops. And part of that was I've had a little bit of experience doing some of that stuff, but none of my guys had. And so I just we kind of found our niche where we were. We were always the company that would install like newer stuff, like higher SEER,
yeah,
um, you know, ductless units, things like that. And there was a little bit of backward compatibility too. So we would install like mobile home stuff, when other companies were installing things that were not used to the high static or just simply installing things, you know, and incorrectly, then we would, do some of that sort of stuff, and so we kind of found our own little niche and never really had to expand much further than that.
and that's what I tell people is like you can expand, you can do whatever you want to do with your own company in this trade or any trade, and then you can also just kind of get in your little niche and corner and just do what you do best and make money there. Because like I do want to expand eventually, but not to the extent of like where I got like a crap load of people to watch over and stuff like that. So we are in this little kitchen service corner, and I really enjoy it. Like I really do love working in the kitchen, rooftops, commercial work. I'm in hospitals, schools, restaurants. It's a change of scenery every time I go out there. So like if you niche down and you kind of find what you're good at, it's a good thing. Like I'm very comfortable where we're at, and we're a small company. I think you guys were too, right?
Yeah. So at my highest, the most amount of employees I had was 11. But I would say the last year we were running about 6 or 7, and then there towards the end, I only had 4. So I had really trimmed the fat.
Yeah, we're kind of similar because we had, I think, at the most like 7, maybe 8
Mhm.
at one time, and then like we had to kind of cut down a little bit, and things changed. This was a long time ago, and we have been in that sweet spot of like 4 to 5. So it's like 4 techs, and then we have one usually a helper that's in and out or part time or something, and we usually get a lot done or a lot more done that way. And it's more of a
Mhm.
like a quality control thing, right? Because that's the other thing is you expand too much, you kind of lose some of that quality, that control over it.
That's exactly what happened to us. We
It got out
I
of
don't want to
hand for
say
us.
anybody was bad. I don't want to say that's but they weren't good. I think it would be safe to say they weren't good.
Not yeah, like me too. I don't want to say anything bad either, but like things didn't work out. They were a little reckless with spending and different things. Like everything adds up, right? And then you don't make the money that you think you're gonna make having all these techs out there running calls, but we make more now with only 4 techs than we did back then. So we're pretty good where we're at right now.
I like it.
So then so you had a small company. I can relate to that. And I mean, obviously you do residential. I don't touch that stuff. I don't care to do that. It's just my I guess my personality and my what I'm comfortable with, right? I
Yeah.
kind of grew up helping my dad, being in kitchens and all that stuff. I kind of got used to that. But for you, like, how did you get into the trades, or how did you find out about the trades? Like, is that something you went to school for? You found it later? You went to go help somebody? Because everybody has a different story.
Yeah. So for me, I knew I didn't want to go to college, and I grew up poor, and I didn't want to go into a bunch of debt. I knew my parents couldn't pay for school, so for me, trade school was the best option. I felt like, and at the time, there was no heating and air class in the school that I went to. There, I think there is now. I've been told, but anyway, so I went to school to be an electrician originally, and I did that for a number of years. I think almost 5 years. So from age say 18 to 24 ish. No, I'm horrible at math. 22 ish, 22, 23 ish. I
Yeah.
worked for electrical companies and only did that. So in fact, it was mostly industrial and commercial, companies. So I did very little residential when I did electrical. And anyway, make a long story short, I chased jobs and ended up moving different cities and ended up at a company that did all three, and
Oh,
loved it, and fell in love with heating and air. And that's where I found it. And then I eventually moved on to working for a company that did property management, and I was their heating and air guy. And um, that was kind of cool because we had so many different, you know, there was no residential or commercial. We had one
yeah.
building that had a chiller or a cooling tower. I'm sorry. And then we had other buildings that had just simple, 80% furnaces. And, I had a couple buildings that had steam boilers, some hydronic boilers. So I really, got a chance to cut my teeth on a lot of that. And, I always felt like, and I still feel like, um, a lot of the guys that start out doing duct work and work their way up, it's not, that's a great way to get into this trade, but they don't, where those guys will sometimes struggle is the electrical side of things, which
Yeah,
is
I've
where
heard that. I've heard that too.
yeah. So that's where I'll usually shine. So you want me to build you a duct transition? It ain't gonna be pretty, but I'm the guy that'll sit down with those schematics and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've heard that people talk about that too, like, because duct work and install crews, like, usually that's, like you said, an easy way to get in. But some people are like, you need to get into service either right away, or try to get into it early, because it's a whole different thing, right? Learning how to fix something versus put in, like, sheet metal, duct work, whatever it is. Nothing against it. If that's your thing, do your thing, because there's guys over on Instagram like Jeff Jadem and all these other guys that do fantastic sheet metal work, and it's like
It's
an
an
art
art.
form. It's an
Yeah.
art form, yeah.
Yeah.
So I could never do that. I would never be that good at that, right? I learned it in my trade school or my college that offered it, and I was like, cool. I know how to do it. I know how to do my 90s offsets. Down here, we only have a duct board. There's not really any sheet metal, so I didn't learn sheet metal, but I know how to cut my duct board, make my 90s, do my offsets, all that stuff. But like, I was like, cool, I know how to do that. I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm gonna go do service. So I wanted to get into service like right away.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
uh
And
the well, the electric, when you were doing that company that did all, like you said, different trades
mhm.
at that one company, did they teach you? Did they offer you to train you, or did you just like kind of eyeball it?
Yeah. Well, eyeball what?
Because you said you were doing the electrician thing and then you got into the heating and cooling. How did you make that transition?
Well, so the guy that I learned under, I wouldn't say that there was much of a choice given. He hired me, and
Oh, it's like, do whatever we need you to do.
he was an interesting guy. The owner was a very interesting guy, and um, but it made me better. He had no mercy. He
Oh,
he was not a sensitive fella, but it made me a better technician, I think, because it was a rough start, but once I got rolling and started to pick up things and started to, understand things, I was rolling pretty good there, So I hire these guys. I've hired these guys before, and they'll whine about, certain things, and I'm like, dude, you would not have made it with the guy that I learned under. You just would not have.
So
You wouldn't have
did
made it a day.
they just throw her into the fire then? Like, figure it out as you go?
Yeah. I mean, I remember at that particular company, I remember him throwing me on this house, putting in attic fans on the roof. And, that was something I'd never done. It was miserable. It was hot. Here's the other thing I learned was, and this is something I would always kind of instill with my guys, is the quicker you get it done, the quicker we can get off this roof. The quicker you get this horrible job done, the quicker we can, roll on, so, but, anyway, he was an interesting guy. And like I say, I think it made me a better technician because of it. But again, what it did was it made me fall in love with heating and air because, I think all the trades have each one of them has their pros and cons, but honestly, for me, it was the first trade that I found that I was like, okay, this is the trade that, if you could have been a doctor or lawyer, if you did go to school to be those things, but you didn't, then this is the trade you go into. And now I'm sure there's some electricians and plumbers that would fight me on that, but I was looking at a lot of guys that ended up in those trades because, they couldn't, they just didn't make the cut. They weren't good enough to do anything else. No offense, but with heating and air, there's some guys that, if you got a good head on your shoulders and you can go, do some cool things, then you can carve out a good life, you could be blessed for sure.
Yeah. There's a ton of like people in this trade, especially now that I get to know people on social media, that they are like super smart, like all the supermarket stuff, the CO2, the people that do the trainings, the teachings, like I could name a whole list. And I always tell these guys, I'm like, man, you guys are like, you guys are really awesome. You guys are super smart. And they're all really humble. They don't want to be acknowledged like that, but like it is like that. And there is one guy that I had on my show, the HVAC doctor, who literally was a doctor or had a PhD and chose to do
that guy
and chose to do HVAC because he really like fell in love with it. So I mean, we have all sorts of people in this trade, honestly.
Yeah. And I remember having that realization, to be honest with you, because I remember I'm not going to mention any more trades because I feel like I've made enough people mad, but I remember there was one particular trade on job sites that we were like, okay, so to get into that trade, you just need to have a drinking problem. And
okay.
And so there was some of that. And so anyway, when I finally came across heating and air, and I actually remember a job we were on when I worked for the company that did electrical. And the sharpest dressed guy that never got dirty on the job was the guy doing the control wiring for all of the units in these classrooms at the school. And I was like, that's the gig I want. You look around, you always look at what other people have, and you're like, okay, that's the gig I want. And
the controls. And there's a lot of different things you can do also just in the HVAC trade, because there's guys that want to go into the control side, the higher end stuff. There's guys that like to be in the field. They're, getting dirty and all that, which is cool. And then there's the guys that do like some guys want to do the engineering or I forget what they're called, the maintenance people, like at the hospitals and stuff like that. Like those guys have a pretty good gig as well, right? They get paid well and they just have like a 9 to 5, they get to clock out. There's not really any overtime stuff there. Or if there is, they get paid really well. Like, you can find a good job in this trade. It's not just install or, field work or anything like that. There's controls, like you said, there's industrial, there's hospital work, it goes on and on.
I'll tell you the other thing. I was talking to a young guy a while, it wasn't that long ago, a few weeks ago, and he was saying sort of what you're saying. He was saying, look, I want to move to service is what he was saying. I'm doing installs and I want to do service,
Yeah.
And I hear that, I hear guys will say that, well, I did start, it's too late now. I can't start out doing electric. I can't start out doing service because I got my first job and I was doing installs. Right. And my question to him and my question to anyone else is, yeah, you want those things, but what are you doing to get there? And he was kind of, I wasn't being hard on him, but I was like, how many YouTube videos did you watch last night?
Yeah.
How many of Adrian's videos did you watch? Well, none. Well, yeah, then how bad do you really want it? And it's not just YouTube videos. How many books have you read? How many classes have you taken? Do you really want that? Or do you just see what other guys have? And, so honestly, I got my first service manager job at the age of 26. And I think maybe I was probably too young for that position. I might have got that position because I was the smartest one there, but maybe not the most mature one there, and I still had a lot to learn, but I've never met anybody personally. I'm sure there's guys out there. I'm sure there's guys that'll see this that could probably beat me, but I've never met anybody personally that's watched more heating and air YouTube videos than I have. I've never met anybody personally that's read as many books as I have when trying to get better at, doing this thing. Books, might be a little bit of a stretch because I'm not as big of a reader as I am a watcher, I guess. But I mean, that's just kind of the point. If you want to move ahead, what are you doing to get there?
And there's plenty of examples of that. Like just when I talk to people in the chat, I know Brian Sanders will probably be watching this. He's somebody who's older, really, and he would talk to me about it. He's like, I really want to do refrigeration because he was doing something else previously. And he was in the HVAC trade and all that, but he really wanted to do commercial refrigeration, kind of like the stuff that I do. And he finally made that jump. He got a job. He's loving it. He's
nice.
having a blast over there. So like, it is a little difficult, like you said, maybe to do that transition, but like you can if you want to, if you really wanted to. And that whole point you made about watching a lot, reading a lot, and I tell people there's no excuse now, right? There's YouTube, there's social media, there's a lot of good HVAC techs that kind of show like tips and tricks if you want it in a short form, TikTok or Instagram, whatever it is. Like you just have to go out there and look for these people, because like when I was in the trade, I mean, when I started in the trade, I was also like trying to look up manuals, trying to look up like anything I could. There was not really any YouTube or anything like that. Social media, not really. So I was always looking for things that I could read up on too. I went to all the classes in person. So I did all that. Like now it's a lot easier. There's no excuse, like you said, pull up a YouTube, read a manual, do whatever you can just to learn more, right? Like that's all you need to do.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. That's another one. I would take the manuals home and read them,
Well, I can rival you then, because I used to do all that stuff. And that's the only way that I survived in this trade, because I didn't really have anybody showing me or taking my hand and showing me all the ropes and stuff. Because I went to school, and then I got my experience with a residential guy to get my contractor's license and all that stuff that I had to get taken care of. But my dad really needed somebody to do refrigeration for him, right? So I'm in the kitchen. We had a couple of guys that I could call, but I didn't have anybody there like showing me what to do. So I was like, how do I get better, right? It's after work or going in your van and taking the time to try and look up some manuals, or take the manual with you and read it, like, front and back. And that's the only way that like I said, I survived in it, that I got better and that I was doing things the right way, because there's a lot of techs out there that just kind of slap together a install or a repair or whatever. And I was out there at a young age, early 20s, because I got my contractor's license like 25, 26, something like that. And kind of outdoing the older guys that were around here, just because I read the manual, I looked up information, I went to all the trainings and classes that were local to me, right? You got to put in all that time.
Absolutely. I remember when I first started my business, I remember installing, it was a Goodman air handler. I was installing it in this house, and I was reading the instructions, and I come across this line. It says, if you have flipped the coil, if you're flipping the coil for, going in a different orientation, you need to install a downflow kit. And I said, well, what's a downflow kit? So I called my rep. I said, hey, I need a downflow kit. He said, what's a downflow kit? And I said, the instructions say I need a downflow kit. And what it ended up being was not much. It was this little plate and the insulation for the bottom of the drain pan. But he told me, he said, look, I've been selling these things for years, and I have hundreds of customers and hundreds of technicians anyway, maybe only dozens of companies. No one has ever called me about that. And I said, well, then none of them are reading the instructions. Not any, it says it right there.
Yeah, man. And I've had those interactions too. Like I can't think of one specifically off the top of my head, but like, I'll see something and I'm like, oh, I need this or I need that, right? It's in the manual or in the training or whatever it is. And like I've gone to calls where like they said they had a few companies go out there and they could not figure it out or something like that. And it's always something dumb. It's always something that it's missing or they didn't install properly. And that's how I got ahead of everybody, just like reading the manuals and looking up this information or talking to the manufacturer. They know the equipment best.
Yeah.
Usually, right?
It should be. It should be.
Yeah. No, man, like I've been there, and that's the only way you beat your competition is like go back to the basics. It's as simple as that, right? Read the manual and do what the instructions tell you to do.
Yep. I don't remember which book it is, but there's a book that says if you want to live like no one else lives, then you need to do things that no one else is willing to do, So that's always kind of stuck with me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not flexing on any of your audience. You've got some pretty smart fellas that jump on these things. They've forgotten half of the stuff that I'll ever learn, but it's just, I think that's part of the game. Like you said, I mean, if we're all swimming upstream here, who's doing what they can to have a bigger paddle, or whatever you can do to get ahead in this thing. And, I think that's part of it. Yeah. So for 4 years, I went to school to be an electrician, 2 of those while I was still in high school and 2 after, doing night classes. And
how was that program? Was it thorough? Did you learn everything you needed to?
It was all right.
It's because people ask me sometimes about trade school, right? And there's different kinds of trade schools. Because like you said, so you went like 4 years in total?
Yep.
Because there's some that are like it's pretty ridiculous, a few weeks, 6 months. And I'm like, I don't know if I would learn anything in that amount of time, right? So
Yep.
I always recommend like the 2-year programs or if it's a college, and they have a 1.5 2-year program, even better. But it's just like I get asked about that. I'm like, try to get one that you're gonna actually learn something from, go ask about the program, all that stuff.
Yeah, I've done YouTube videos on trade schools. I'm a little hard on them. I'll say this. So the electrical program that I went through, it was very similar to a lot of the heating and air programs, meaning we learned a lot of theory. We learned a lot of how it works, but not necessarily or how it should work, but not necessarily how it actually does work, right? And so, but I think that there's something to be said for there ain't but so much you can learn in a classroom anyway. There is something to be said for learning certain things by going to the school of hard knocks. But I actually had a guy working for me a couple years ago, and he said, I want to go to this trade school down here. And I told him, that's fine. We'll send you if you want to go. And I think I made up some deal with him. Like if you get a certain grade and, then we'll reimburse you kind of thing. But ultimately, and I told him this, you got to understand what their motivation is. So the school does have a motivation here, and it ain't to help you. It's just like colleges. Colleges don't care if you get a job after. They have one goal and one goal only, and that is to offer you some sort of program or certificate to make you want to pay them money, right? And that's what their goal is. And trade schools are no different. So the trade school I went to, they told us, hey, there's 2 programs that have the best upside. You'll make the most amount of money if you go into computers or into bricklaying and, masons. And that was the 2 that they pushed. I remember the assembly that I was at in high school. And I later found out the reason they were pushing those 2 classes wasn't because they have the highest upside. It's because those were the 2 classes that had the lowest attendance the year before. And
I was gonna say they just needed more people in the seats.
Yep. And so the bottom line is you just got to understand what their motivation. I mean, that's just the way my brain works. I'm that conspiracy guy that's always like, why do you think what you're saying? Why are you telling me that kind of thing?
Yeah. And I had a kid on here, Ryan, who will be the episode before this. But he was already like an entrepreneur. He has like the e-commerce type of deal going on. So he kind of knew the business side a little bit. And when he went to look for a trade school, he actually went and interviewed each of them. He got to sit in the classes. Like he did his due diligence just to know that it was going to be a good school for him. And he's currently in that trade school right now, doing really well. It's a lot of hands-on from what I can see because he's always posting about it. But I guess I got lucky with mine because like I had a total of like 4 or 5 like teachers. Each one was, assigned to a subject. One was electrical, the other one was like the duct work, and there was one for refrigeration, so on and so forth. But half of them were still working like for the school in the HVAC department, right? One of them did like the chiller work, all that kind of stuff. They would take us to the machine room and show us all that stuff. The other half of them actually owned a business still, and they were still running a business. So like we would always pick their brain, talk about calls they had, talk about the business. We got to have all those conversations. And they told us early on that they would, like, if we needed it, because I didn't need it, I was going to go work for my dad, right away, or try to. But they actually would help you get jobs afterwards because they had so many connections with people that they knew. So like I guess I was fortunate in my class, that went with me, where they wanted to help us out a lot.
I don't want it to be just me completely bashing the school I went to. I had one of my teachers was really great, and he did the same. He tried to link us up with certain companies and or jobs, and that is how I got my first job. So it wasn't completely all bad. But the other thing that happened to me was in the state of Virginia, to get a journeyman license, you have to have a certain amount of work hours and a certain amount of schooling. And depending on what that ratio is, you can have less of one and more than another sort of deal. But what I found out after completing all that schooling was the school that I was going to was not recognized by the state as an approved, accredited class.
No way.
And so all those hours counted for nothing towards getting an actual license. And
dang.
And the reason that's important is they told us at the beginning of the class, you would get a journeyman's card when you were done. You would complete the apprenticeship program at their. Now, keep in mind what I just said. There's one particular word that matters there. But you would get a journeyman's card after you completed the apprenticeship program. Journeyman's card, not journeyman's license from the state. Big difference there. And
I was going to say,
it was a lie.
False advertising.
Absolutely.
False advertising.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So I would go one step further. I think that's awesome that Ryan did that, but I would go one step further. And if you have the ability, interview people that have gone through the program.
Oh yeah.
And see what they say, So
yeah, because I had a couple that asked me about it because they were in my area. And I was like, that's a good idea too. Ask the people that actually went to the school you're looking into. Now, unfortunately, they were going to it during the COVID or right after. So it was all like virtual, right? And it could have been like 2 years after, and they were still trying to push it. And I was like, man, that really sucks. Like, I had a really good experience, but like, I don't know what's going on now. That's a whole different side of things. But yeah, it's a good point. Do your research, talk to people that were in the program or are around the program, and figure out what they do. But they did you dirty with that.
I agree.
That thing. It's kind of like false advertisement, or trying to hook you in with that, and then it's like, oh, flip it on you.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, if you just got to understand what their motivation is. Their motivation is to have kids in those classrooms, to fill the class and continue to get money and so on. So
yeah, and I'm like that with everything. I'm like, why do you need something from me, or why are you being nice to me? Like, I always have that mindset anyway, like in life in general. So there's always a catch.
Yeah.
Or it's like better to think that way,
I do have something for you. I know you had made a comment that I know all these statistics, and I found a statistic for you. Did you know the state that you live in has more licensed HVAC technicians than any other state?
I don't know. It's a good thing or bad thing. Like, I hope they're real good techs.
I mean, probably not, but the state, according to the stat I found, there's 85,000 licensed HVAC technicians in the state, and that's more than California and Florida combined. So I thought that was pretty wild.
Well, I will say, because I've talked to guys about it, and I'm like, because I took my license test, relatively quickly, right? I had experience because school counted for me, and then like I just needed like a couple more years in the field with somebody, and then I got to go take it. But people are surprised, and I don't know. I mean, it is kind of simple to get, I will say. It's the hardest part is that it's timed, right? You got to do all the questions in that time. It is open book though on my end. So in
Same
Texas. Here. Okay, because somebody told me in their state that it wasn't. Like, what? They couldn't believe it. I'm like, yeah, it's not super hard. You just have to be committed, when you're studying and going to take the test, like to know it and have the book there ready for you. But yeah, there's a whole other side of things that I've been seeing, like where like you can be book smart and get the license, honestly, right? So people will get the license and then sell it to companies or lend it out. And there's a whole lot of that going on. So that's probably why we're so high also, because I've heard of that, upstate, that they do that a lot. So
interesting.
It's a business just to have a license and then lend it out. That's a thing too.
Yeah, I have not been approached by anyone since I sold my company about anything like that. I've heard of guys being approached with things like that, but
I'm trying to remember. I had just talked to somebody about it, and that's why. Oh, I think it was when I had Walter on, because the company that he was at actually paid for people to go get their license, because they wanted, as long as one of them has it, they're covered. So I think that's how they maintained a license in their place of business, right? And I've heard of that recently, now that I talked to more people, because there's even on Instagram, they're like, did you know so and so doesn't have a license, but they have a big company? It's just because they either buy it or they have somebody in the company that they hired that has the license. So there's always those kind of loopholes, so you got to watch out with that.
That's how Virginia is. So in Virginia, the owner does not necessarily have to be licensed in that trade. You just have to have I believe the wording is you have to have a full-time employee that works at least 30 hours there every week. So I think that's the verbiage that they use, but I'm sure folks try to get around it. So
it's one of those loopholes, because I'm like, why do I think it's a weird rule, but some businesses work like that. Yeah. So then, okay, and that's cool that you were an electrician, because that's how my dad, well, that's what my dad did too. And he moved into the food service industry. But you did that, you learned heating and cooling, and you had other jobs. Like, when did you decide that you wanted to start your own business?
When I had the worst boss ever.
Oh, okay. That's what drove you.
That was a part of it, but part of it was I'd just gotten my master's license, and I mean, I'd always known that I wanted to be some sort of business owner, even as a child. When I
Okay.
when I grew up in the trailer park, the wealthiest guy in the trailer park was the guy that owned the trailer park. So I remember that, and so I was working at a company and got my master's license. The company was a property management company, so it wasn't like I was
Oh yeah.
moonlighting and stealing customers or anything. But I did start moonlighting, and it's a long story, but the short version is I got fired from that company, and I sure was glad that I dug that well before I was thirsty, because then it was real. I was out on
Oh
my
yeah.
own, and I booked an interview with a company, a job interview, on a Saturday 2 weeks after I was fired. And so I started, quote unquote, I became self-employed. First week was rough, right?
Yeah.
Second week, I made more money that week than I would have if I would have had a job. And
Okay.
I came home Friday evening and I said to my wife, I don't want to go to that job interview. Can I not? Are you okay with me not? And she said, sure. And it was a scary time, but we never looked back. It was the best decision ever.
No, that's awesome, and that's kind of what happened with my dad. There was a so you had gotten everything in line basically before you were let go or anything.
Yeah, so I'd gotten my master's license. I was moonlighting, so I even had insurance. I was
Okay, you had it all.
doing everything legit. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, because that's kind of what happened with my dad. Like he got everything done on the business side, the legal stuff, everything, the name, and he was getting it ready to go while he was still working, and then there was a conflict at work. Some things went down. I got a phone call. Hey, can you come pick me up? And it's one of those like he says he quit. They said they fired him. I don't know the
I went
story.
through that once. Yeah, yeah.
So I was still working at like a grocery store or it's like a Sam's Club, and I used to work nights, so like he called me during the day or early in the day. I was like half asleep, and I was like, "What the hell happened?" And he's like, "No, I need you to come pick me up." So I went to go get him, and then like that he always says that's the best thing that ever happened to him because he was not sure about starting, right? Even though he had everything in motion, he wasn't sure how to start. He was afraid to start, all that stuff that you go through when you open up a business. And he's like, no, that was the best thing that ever happened to him. And then, he hit the floor running after that. And like you said, there's
Good
going to
for
be a
him.
rough, there's going to be a rough patch, right? You're like,
Yeah,
I don't know if this is going to work. We'll see what happens. And then you start making that money. Cause like anything in the trades, honestly, I mean, I'm particular to HVAC because I feel like that's an easy one to kind of make money in. Um, he was in the kitchen stuff, obviously first because we didn't have an HVAC division then. But yeah, man, he was in demand after a while. Like, even with that, they do need good techs because like he was one of those, and I mentioned on your show that he did all his trainings, he learned all this stuff, he was reading books in his off time. Like he went from electrician to food service, and he really like dove into those books to learn it as well as he could. And now he's the guy that can go and fix something that other people can't fix. And it's really cool to see. But like, it's similar story to like kind of what you were saying. Like, it's one of those things that just happens, and then you start making really good money, and you're like, "Whoa, this is a good business to be in."
yeah, yeah. I went through that one time. I had a company that he took me to lunch and he said, "It's not working out. You're not up to snuff." And of course, I got mad. I was young, and and I actually, this is the truth. I told him, I was like, I'm running circles around all your other guys, so I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, "You've never ran circles around anybody in your life, And so I stormed out of there, turned in my uniforms the next day, filed unemployment while looking for a new job, and they turned me
Yeah.
down. And they said it was because he never actually said the words "you're fired." And I said, well, then I'll be
Oh,
back to work tomorrow. I'll be back to work tomorrow then, you know?
yeah.
And yeah, that guy was a snake too. So the last
Oh
boss
man.
I had, she was a broom rider, and that guy was a snake. So I had a couple. You get enough bad bosses, and then you just decide you don't want a boss anymore, and you start your own business.
Yeah, man. And that's how it is, unfortunately, right? My dad, like that whole thing that I talked about, him calling me and the whole situation at work, it's because somebody he talked to went and kind of like talked to the people above him and got him in trouble, and they were supposed to be friends. I don't know. A lot of weird stuff happens, when they're trying to. I think he was gunning for that position that my dad had because he was like a manager, and they turn on you real quick.
Yep. You
Um,
ain't lying.
okay, so then you started your own business, and that's a good feeling because, like you said, like once you kind of go that self-employment route, it's really hard to go back to anything else because I like I worked for my dad. It's technically his business, but I get to run the HVAC side and I do all the behind the scenes stuff anyway. But like I get to set my own hours, set my own, I get to pick and choose my work. I love doing all that stuff. And then you get to kind of do your own thing. And I get to make all my kids events and things that they need to do. I mean, you're not going to make everything, business comes first. Unfortunately, sometimes, right? You got to pay the bills, but for the most part, I can make all the school events, take them when they need to go to the doctor or something, something like that. Even during that whole COVID thing, I was the one that was flexible with my schedule. So I was watching him, my son, and like doing the whole at home teaching that I was not very good at. So I was like, I don't even like doing school myself, but let's give it a try.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I
I don't
didn't
have
enjoy
much to
it.
add on that.
I didn't enjoy it, but I did it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome though. I think my only rebuttal would be family comes first, man. Family comes first. Those customers can wait.
That's everybody's like whenever I ask people about like what do they like to do outside of work or hobbies or anything like that, a lot of the responses are family time, right? And doing things with their family and going out and all that. So like when people ask me like about opening up a business or doing their own thing, I'm like, you get more family time. You might in the beginning, you're gonna build it up. It's gonna take a little time. You're gonna be up late. You know, it is what it is, right? You got to build up the brand, but you get to reap those benefits later. It's like you get all the family time in the world that you want. Like we had a lot of, or we had too much work when we started, and we had to start thinking like we can say no. That was a hard thing for us to do too, is like learn when to say no and tell the customer that it can wait, especially like if it's just like an AC or something. Like if it's a freezer, a lot of product, something is expensive, then yeah, I got to go out in the middle of the night. But most of the time it can wait, spend time with the family, the kids, and do all that. So the family time is important, like you said, and you can do a lot of it when you do your own thing.
Yeah. I've had customers, I'm sorry, employees that would, they'll say, oh, well, oh, you're still in your slippers this morning, and oh, oh, I bet you slept until 12 this morning, didn't you? And they would say all kinds of things, but if they only knew, when you own a business, man, all those nights they get to go home, they get off work, they get
Oh
to lay
yeah.
their head on their pillow at night, they get to see their families. All those nights I was, working on my website, sending out proposals, invoicing the customers, working on my next YouTube video, just all that stuff that I was doing. I'm a night owl anyway, I'm just not a morning person.
I'm
I'm
the same
learning.
way.
Yeah. I'm learning to be more of a morning person because I've also learned that the more you say that, the more you believe it. So I'm trying to stop saying it so much. But anyway, yeah. So after 10 p.m. is when I would always work on my other businesses,
And I feel like I'm more, my brain's more active at night. I'm more creative. I get ideas and I'm like, I got to do this now or I'm going to forget
yep.
type of deal. So yeah, I've been there, doing the late night, even if it's like invoicing, quoting, like you said, sending out stuff and emailing. I always end up doing that late at night too. And I get a little envious and jealous of these other guys that just get to clock out, right? 5, 6 o'clock, they get to clock out and don't think about work. And then all we do is think about work 24/7.
Yeah. Yep. You never turn it off. It was weird. The week after I sold my business, it was the first week. It was the first week in 12 years that the phone didn't ring, and I had like, I don't want to say no stress, but it was like I went from level 100 to level 12 real quick. And it was so weird, so it was crazy.
I can imagine that's a weird feeling. If we're going from a business owner to like kind of chilling out for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mentioned your YouTube channel earlier. It's doing really well. And if anybody wants to go and see a fresh, young, clean shaven Josh, you can go digging around his YouTube channel. They're still up there. I'd seen them. So you've been on there for a while. What made you kind of want to do the YouTube channel? Was there like a goal in mind when you started it?
Absolutely. So the goal was, when I started Griffin Air, which was my business, there was nobody in my area that had a website except for one company. So I built the second website.
I noticed that too. Like that was a big importance to me. It's like getting that presence, right? The online presence, a website, all that stuff. Cause like I was trying to do things that other companies weren't doing.
That's it. Yep. So my biggest competitor had a big billboard in the county. So I said, well, I can't get a bigger billboard, but I can get a bigger website, and I can get a bigger YouTube channel, and I can get and all these things. So YouTube originally was a place for me to get on my soapbox and tell potential customers, here's why you should buy what I'm selling, because when you're in their home, you've never experienced this, Adrian, because you've never been in the home, but when you're in their home, the walls are up. They know you're trying to sell them something. And it's, unless you want to be a slick salesman, which I never wanted to be, it can be tough at times. And so YouTube, the walls are down. I can send them a quick video. They can look at, whatever air quality product or whatever I'm telling them about, and the walls are down, and I can get on my soapbox and tell them how great that product was. What's crazy is it was a hobby and a business tool for 2, 3, 4 years. And then I got to 700 subscribers just by, it was a hobby. And then that's when YouTube sent me that email that said, if you get to 1,000 subscribers, we're going to give you a check. We're going to send you a check. Cause I was way past the watch hours. And
okay.
So I started saying, hit that subscribe button on my channel. And 2 months later, they sent me that first check, and the rest was history.
That's awesome. I had a similar, the reason I asked what the goal was, because I had a similar one when I started my stuff. More so the Instagram, because that's where I kind of like first put up anything, and it was for my business, right? It's like I need to run ads or showcase my work or get pictures up and stuff. Then I quickly realized this is not working. I'm a commercial business. Homeowners are not watching this. No managers or owners or anybody that I need to connect with are on here, or at least not at that time. Now you can connect though, because now I do connect with a lot of manufacturers, companies, tool manufacturers, all that. Now they're all on there, so it's good to network on there. But back then, I was like, I'm not reaching who I need to reach. So my goal had to pivot. I had to pivot and go to just building up a social media, because I was getting people from like all different countries watching and all this. So that was something different. I had to kind of go away from the business model and then just kind of build relationships and friendships and all that came with it. And yeah, man, your channel is doing really well. I do like what you do now. It's like the whole you kind of have that news anchor style. That's what I told my girlfriend. I was like, he kind of does all the news and the statistics and all that stuff, and I'll keep up to date. If there's anything, more than likely you're going to cover it on one of your videos. So that's kind of cool to see. Yeah, I like seeing that side of things.
Yeah, a lot of folks will hear because my channel's called HVAC Guide for Homeowners, and they'll go, "Ooh, I hate DIY." Well, me too. I'm not a DIY channel. It's more for
I thought you were gonna be a DIY channel when you first popped up, but then I started
yeah,
watching the videos.
yeah. A lot of folks think that. I've had potential sponsors say, we don't sponsor DIY," and I'm like, "Well, good, because I'm not."
Yeah.
And no, the channel quickly became the analogy I use is if I was going to give my mom or your mom advice on buying
Oh
a
yeah.
heating and air system, here's what I would say. And that's really what I do with a lot of my videos. I do different things now because I'm trying to branch out and have some fun with it. We've done some videos for other pros. Nowhere near as good as yours, but we're trying. And
Thank you.
yeah. But that's really what our target audience is. And I think that those folks, I think there's a lot of folks out there like that, right? They don't want to be DIY, but they also don't want to be taken advantage of by some of the guys that are in our industry that take advantage of people, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So
my phone is blowing up because I posted a meme today about a $2,000 capacitor. I put in the captions that it was a joke, and like there is like full on arguments in the chat about, or in the comments about HVAC techs are scum of the earth. I'm like, no, not all of us, but there are some.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I just had to throw that in there because my phone has been going off like crazy.
that's pretty clever, actually. Pretty clever marketing or
I was
post
just
you did
talking.
there.
I was just talking with somebody because I was like, man, like, because we were talking about social media, and like, still have yet to figure out TikTok, but I still post on there. And I guess we're talking about like views and how they're up and down and stuff. Then I posted that, and I replied to him like, well, controversial videos still do well. Everybody's like going crazy over there.
A lot of homeowners don't understand something that a lot of guys don't talk about enough in our industry, and that is people talk about you know diagnostic fees, and they talk about flat rate, and they talk about all these different things. But the thing they don't talk about enough, in my opinion, is they don't talk about non-billable hours in our industry
Oh
enough.
yeah.
And that's why a lot of folks struggle with the pricing, and why it does if we are putting a $10 part in, there are even guys that will get into our trade that they just don't understand that yet. And because I remember getting in the trade and saying, well, it only took me 10 minutes to put in, and it was a $10 part. Why are we charging? Back then we were charging 175 to put it in,
Yeah,
and
that was my issue too. The same mindset.
yeah. And then I think the second you make that click, that there's so many non-billable hours in comparison to electricians and to plumbers and to tile guys and to painters. I remember I had a drywall guy. He had to fix we had an air handler leak. It never happens to anybody, but it happened to us, right? We had an air handler that the float switch failed, and we had water coming through a ceiling. So we paid the guy to fix a hole in drywall. The entire spot was 4-foot square section, and his bill was $1,200. And I remember saying to him, I'm like, just so you know, insurance not paying for this. I'm paying for this. So,
Oh yeah.
what are we doing here? What are you charging me per hour? And he said, well, what do you charge per hour? Well, it doesn't matter what I charge per hour because I have so many non-billable hours. I'm a heating and air guy. You're a painter. There's a difference there. It's not because I'm better. It's because I
Yeah.
have so many non-billable hours in my industry. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, and me and my dad struggled with that, right? Where it's like, well, we don't want to charge too much. I mean, this was like too easy, right? It's like, but no, like, that's why some people do those fixed rates or whatever they're called. Just to go put in like, if it's a certain part, there's a certain price, right?
Yeah.
We do more of the per hour thing because we're commercial. They kind of try to keep track on us about that, but still, I'm not gonna go out there just for, because like somebody was trying to charge me per They wanted me to go down to like the per minute or per half hour. I'm like, no, that's not how it works, right? Like,
Right.
I'm here if it's like whatever your minimum is, right, to get out there, or a minimum time, whether it's an hour and a half. Like, there's minimums, what I would call them, because you're not going to go out there for like $50, $75, whatever it is. Like, there's other costs that go into it, your truck, your insurance, your license, your everything, right? So it's not talked about enough. I agree, but like, I don't know why we're in such a, and it's probably all the bad apples that we have, that we're under a microscope, because I post something like that, and then like everybody, all the homeowners come and attack me when they're probably overpaying, at the restaurant they like to go to, the DoorDash, their insurance company, the hospital bill. Like, there's a bunch of price gouging in other industries.
Absolutely. And I'm not driving a Bentley, and you aren't either. And
No, no.
so I remember my mom was in the hospital, and they gave her some ibuprofen, and they charged,
Yeah,
I'm wanting to say it was $500.
yeah,
And it was like, but that's okay. That's acceptable because it's in that industry, and that's a hospital, So, that's why I just go back to the non-billable hours, because there is a lot of overhead, and there is a lot of things that are hard to explain to people.
hmm,
And, that I think a lot of guys struggle with that. They struggle with flat rate, and they struggle with the hourly thing. We did the same thing. We flat rated a few things, but it was usually hourly, but we try to give an upfront price. So it felt
okay,
flat ratey, and, but even still, you give them a flat price up front, an upfront price that they approve, because you're like, well, I'm going to replace this compressor, and it's going to take me X amount of hours, and it's going
yeah,
to, take, all these materials and the compressor, whatever. But it never failed. And you marked, it's going to take you 4 hours, for
oh
example. And
yeah,
they say, it only took you 3 hours and 28 minutes, you know?
yeah. Because
So,
I've been doing quotes recently, right? Because I got a lot of old equipment that needs like compressors or leak repairs. You have to, especially if they want the price up front. I mean, unless they want it just billable, like we can do both, but like most of the time we got to give a quote up front, and that's going to be what they pay. I'm not going to charge too close to like what it actually is, because there's always room for error and things like that. And then
right.
I like, if I give you a fixed price and then it takes me 2 extra hours, are you going to pay the extra 2 hours after the fact? No, they're going to hold you accountable to that bill.
Right.
So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and we struggled with that at the beginning, but we've kind of been, comfortable with how we do things now, where it's like, overshoot it a little bit, have a reasonable markup. I'm not charging $2,000 a capacitor, by the way, if anybody's listening, but
Yes,
it's
he
it's
is.
it's
Yes, he
reason
is.
it's reasonable. And everybody loves to like, in those comments are like, oh, I found it on Amazon or eBay for like $5. So I'm like, okay, you go wait for that shipping. I got it on my truck. That's another thing that you pay for, right? Like, I have it,
Yep.
the inventory.
Yeah. I mean, I think you reap what you sow, but if you're charging a fair price for a fair job, considering you have so many non-billable hours, none of us are driving Bentleys. At least none of my friends are. I mean, I know there's a couple guys out there that, anyway, I'll get off of that. But yeah, so I think that's just what it boils down to, Can you sleep at night? Are you
Yeah.
doing folks right?
Like we mentioned earlier, you recently sold your company. And I've been talking to a lot of guys that actually have been doing that, or I actually know like Jake Kraus from the HVAC Nights group that we have. Him and his buddy actually bought a company, and that's how they built up theirs. So I'm still new to all that. I don't know how all that works, but like, what made you essentially want to sell it off and go a different route?
Yeah. So, by the way, y'all have the HVAC nights. I'd probably be in the HVAC jesters, court. I'd be,
Yeah.
I'm the next crew over. Um, no, I think there's a lot of reasons, right? But I think ultimately, a couple things is I've been blessed. You know, you start making YouTube videos and some doors have opened because of that. And so that's been, you know, surreal and good, you know. I'm no big deal. I'm not the guy, but someday I'd like to be a guy in our industry, right? Um, but that was part of it. And so I was already thinking about it. I'd accepted a few offers from companies giving me bids about not quite a year, but close to a year before I actually sold the company. And fast forward to I believe it was October, I was approached by a local distributor who said, "Hey, we have to fill this position to train some of these folks, and I've seen your content, and you know, the bottom line is, had I never hit that record button, I'd still be just some
Oh,
lowly guy fixing air conditioners up here in the small town that I live in." So anyway, make a long story short, that paired with I had a really hard time finding good help, and I know that's what everybody said, but I had had a few bad apples come through enough for me to say, my gosh, you know, this is I'm not a babysitter, I'm not your mama, and I'm surely not welfare services. So if you don't want to do a good job, then you know it just put a really bad taste in my mouth. And so the stars just aligned, and I had a company that was willing to. I think I could have got more money, but it wasn't about the money. I wanted a company that was going to take care of our customers, honor our warranties, and take care of our existing employees that wanted to stay. And so I went with a local competitor, and I think it was the right move, especially for, you know, our customers and the one employee that stayed.
so they took care of like everybody for you, basically your customers, your employees, and you were able to move on basically. Now, do they keep the name? Like, does it work? Is it the same company essentially, just without you?
So
Because
they
like
are
it's
dissolving.
named
They've
after you.
merged. What's that?
Because it's like named after you.
Yeah, so they bought the name, but they're not gonna work under the name. And honestly, because I have a YouTube channel, that was a big thing. You know, they've acquired other companies before, but they said they had never dealt with that before because for me, you know, I have all these YouTube videos where it says Griffin Air on my hat, and
Yeah.
I know I don't want someone that actually now owns that brand to be able to come to me and say, "You need to take all that content down." And so I wanted to, that was part of the negotiating, and they call it licensing. So I had to license the name, and there was parameters with that. And it was a lot, you know. I will say this: if you ever do sell a business, make sure you get a good lawyer. I had a good one, and you know, it was well worth it.
That sounds like a lot to deal with. I've actually had a few guys offer to buy mine too, or ours, and I'm like, no, like I'm pretty happy where we're at with it. And I just told my dad because he does like the hot side, and he train or he takes care of that. I was like, if you don't train anybody to do what you do, I mean, I'm putting it on myself that I do want to learn that side soon, but I was like, if you don't start training people to do what you do, I'm just gonna turn it into reliable HVAC because right now it's reliable kitchen services. I was like, I can do the name change real quick.
Yeah, that's funny.
Um,
Um, I learned so much in that small amount of time that um I don't think I'll ever own a business again, but I could be wrong. But if I ever did decide to start, you know, a heating and air business again, I've learned so much that I know that you know, from what I know now, I could
yeah,
grow it, you know, tenfold and
I,
sell it
I've yeah,
tenfold.
I've heard the same thing. I've known now a handful of people that have sold their companies,
Hmm.
and they all say the same thing. They're like, well, like they're not interested at the moment to get back into it or in the near future, but if they ever did, learning from mistakes, obviously, or doing it one time, that they're like, well, I could probably build it up real quick and get back into it if I really wanted to. But
Yeah.
now you're doing training essentially, right? So is
Yep.
that for a manufacturer or distributor?
It's for a distributor, so it's not for a direct manufacturer. But they do have certain brands that they sell. And that was part of it too. So the company that bought my company, they sold the same brand that I always sold, which was Daikin. And then now the distributor I work for sells Daikin. So it's kind of all in the family.
I've seen the videos, the Daikin tour, all that. I know what your favorite flavor is.
Yeah.
What would you call it? The Daikin Kool-Aid?
Yeah, I'm drinking the Daikin Kool-Aid for sure. I'm sure there's comments that are going to pop up and they'll say, well, it's the same as Goodman. And it's not. You know, if you only ever sell 14 SEER systems, then fine. Yes, it's the same stuff. But if you ever branch out and sell something outside of just the normal single stage stuff, you would start drinking the Kool-Aid too. Because I think somebody's got to be king. And for me, if I had to pick someone, it would be them. I think that as far as residential goes, they're king.
Being in the field and stuff, and you start noticing like when I started, I thought every manufacturer or name was distinctly different, and I was like, wait a minute, these all look the same. And then come to find out they're all the same. They're all made by the same person, and just slap a different sticker on there. At least with the simple stuff, like you said, what I see and all that. But you got to tour that Daikin facility. Are you supposed to go back for anything with them?
Yes. So they, I'm hoping to go back a whole bunch for lots of different things, but the only thing I know for sure is because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, they have a conference that they invite new potential dealers in to explore, the products, to give them a little sales pitch, I guess. Wine and dine them and give them a tour of the factory. So I'll usually, I went down once for that and hope to do it again. That was a really cool experience. And, you
were the only one they allowed to film from what I remember. Right.
Yeah. So I was definitely the first. So there's things that, and there were still things they wouldn't allow me to record, proprietary things. But yeah, so there was things that, I'm still the kid that grew up in the trailer park. It's just nuts to me, I'm there's not an arrogant bone in my body, it's just, it's very surreal. But anyway, they said, I was the first one to ever record certain things in there. One of those things being one of their big products. And, if you ever do get into residential, it's called the Daikin Fit. So it's their side discharge unit. Yeah. And so they just started in the last year or two making that here in America, which is, a huge deal because a lot of the companies don't. And so, so we got to take cameras in there and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was I saw the video. I thought it was really cool to get an insight, and then allowing you to film when they hadn't was really cool. So it's good to see that part of things too, like how the stuff's made. It's good old made in America now, like you said, and that's really neat.
Yeah, it was for me too. If you watch the video, just meeting some of the people, and you think I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, some of those people are drinking the Kool-Aid. They're chugging it. They just they're really believing in what they're doing, and I don't know. Everybody has their preference, right? I grew up, my family, we were Fords. Everybody drove Ford.
Oh, yeah.
And then I had cousins, and they all drove Chevrolets. And so everybody has their preferences, but for me, I've always said, and I do believe this, if Daikin stopped being the best tomorrow, I would stop telling everybody they're the best, So that's how much I do believe that. And I'm also not selling anyway. I feel like I'm going on a whole rant on how great Daikin is now, but that it was a really cool experience, and I did appreciate them letting me bring cameras in there. I brought my drone and wrecked it there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, it was a lot of fun.
Did you get any footage with the drone before you wrecked it?
I sure did. It's in the video
Oh,
at the beginning of the video, but yeah.
oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Okay. Because I was gonna say like it would have sucked if you just wrecked it right away.
oh, I know. Yeah. No, we had shot an entire day with the drone. Well, not an entire day. The first day I was there, we had shot maybe an hour or two with the drone, and it overheated because you guys down in Texas are crazy and it's hot. And
Oh, that's right.
so I had to put it away. And then so we came back a couple days later and did it again. And there's this overhang at one of the parts of the building. And I was paying attention to the security there because they're they want to make sure you're doing things right and you are who you say you are. Not just anybody can just walk up and walk in,
Yeah.
And I'm paying attention to them and just ran the drone straight up and hit the blades hit the roof, and it was I mean, I don't know how much a drone is anymore because it's been a while since I bought it, but they're not cheap, and I'm over there about ready to
Oh
cry.
no. Oh no, they're not. Because I looked into it too, and I'm like, it'd be kind of neat to have a drone, and I'm like, no, never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, yeah, because you came to Texas for that tour, and that's why I have issues trying to record at work because my phone just instantly overheats. So
Really?
that's why I started buying like these little GoPro or not GoPro, DJI cameras and stuff like that, so that I could, or it could last a little bit longer than my phone.
Yeah. Do you have the new DJI, the Osmo 3 Pocket?
Yeah, I got that one. I love it.
Me too. I just got it, and I'm in love with it.
It's really cool.
Sweet.
I used it to film a little bit at AHR. I don't know if you've ever been to those expos.
I went last year. I wanted to go this year, but with the whole company sell, it wasn't going to be doable. But yeah, I'll be there next year. I think they say it's going to be in Orlando.
Yeah, apparently everybody's going to that one because this time it was in Chicago and a lot of people were not feeling it, but it was still super packed. So I've been to the Vegas one, the Atlanta one. I didn't know you were there, but Vegas, Atlanta, Chicago, and then the only one I have not been to yet is Orlando, but that's the next one.
Nice. Yeah. No, I'm definitely going and love to meet you and all those folks. Hopefully we can all do something. But yeah, I think the Atlanta one, I don't know that we knew each other yet. I think it was like a week or two after that. We were like, oh, you were at HR? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So,
and it's hard to, the best part of it is meeting like fellow technicians and everybody you see online and stuff. Like that's what I had done this last time at the Chicago one. And I didn't get to go to all the booths that I wanted to go to, right? Because like they do show some cool stuff.
yeah.
But I was just hanging out with the guys, just going around talking to people. And that was the best part. But it's really hard, especially the Atlanta one. I don't know what about it. Like it was a lot of walking. It was a lot to take in. And I got lost a few times. It was everybody said the same thing. It was a little confusing, at least the Atlanta one. But seeing everybody, talking to everybody, that's the coolest part. And then like you get to see some cool stuff, competitions and different things that they do. I do feel like every year they're getting a little better at like engaging with us. Like I said, they do the competitions, like who can build the mini split the fastest, or do sheet metal, or do all this stuff. So really cool experience. More than likely there's a lot of people going next year. If I get to go, like I would love to meet you, get to talk to you, and anybody else, because a lot of the guys in the chat or that are usually in the chat have said that they're going to go too.
Yeah, it's gonna be, Orlando seems like it's such a cool place anyway, but yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Chicago kind of sucked. Like it wasn't horrible, but like I'm from Texas, I'm like it. I was a little scared because like that first night that I got in, it was like now the week before it was like negative. I would not have survived in that. So like the data that I got there, I think it was like 20, which was manageable, but like I had never seen snow before, and I'm like, what the hell? Like
really, you've never seen it? That's cool.
We only get it like once every like 10 years, and it's only for the morning or whatever, and then it goes away. It melts. So like that was like real snow, and I was like, holy crap! I had like 3 or 4 jackets on. I was like terrified, but it wasn't that bad. It's just that I was very scared going over there.
Yeah, no, next year is gonna be a lot of fun. We definitely need to get some of the folks together, you know.
Well, Jake and Curtis said they're going to go, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, those are the nights, right?
Yeah, because Curtis tried to get him to go this year because me and Jake had went, and then he was like, "No, I'm not going to go," and then he's like, "Damn it, I missed out. I should have gone." And then he's like, "I'm going to go to the next one." So we'll see him there.
How'd you get linked up with those guys and start the cool club, the HVAC Nights Club with the round table?
The cool kids.
Cool kids.
It's like with anything, like they used to comment on my stuff, and then I would like check them out and comment on their, just kind of like how me and you basically, you know, started talking. And that's the cool thing about it. Like it's hard now to kind of go through all the comments, but like I do try to go through them, and you never know, like some of these guys are pretty cool, especially the ones that actually post. You know, you get to see them and get to know them through their videos. And I don't know, we all just got along really quick. We might be very different like on screen, but we all have the same interest, hobbies. You know, we're very similar even though we look very different.
Right.
Or act very different, you know. Kraus is up here, Curtis is like so, and then I'm like probably the least energetic one of the bunch.
Yeah, and congrats on the award, by the way. That was really cool.
Thank you. I need to figure out how to display it. It's over here.
Oh yeah, there it is.
But I need to redo my background. I'll do it soon.
I need to redo my background too. I'm gonna have to lay some new brick. So you got your sign back there flexing on everybody.
Everybody loves it. I won it, so I was like, awesome. You know, just in time when I was doing or starting this podcast thing. So
I had a green screen for a while too. So I was doing green screen videos with like, I tried to do like a newsroom behind me or something. And it was pitiful. So now I'll just do the brick. So.
I've wanted to try that, but I think you need like a really good camera for it to come off, or like to look well or good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never got into it. I'm like in a small corner over here. I know it looks better on camera, but like I'm just in a little corner over here.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm actually building a little studio for my YouTube videos, and I'm hoping to get a little something better when that all happens. But we'll see.
Eventually I'll get there. Right now I had a workbench area in the garage where I can kind of like work on stuff, and then I can shoot some of my like tool videos there. And then I'll work on this. You know, I need to kind of not change too much, but like make it more practical.
You've got a book up there that says humans.
I don't read books. That's my girlfriend's bookshelf. It looks cool, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yep. All right, man. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. I don't know if there's anything you want to kind of close out on. Any advice for any guys?
Stay humble. And just learn what you can, and shoot, most of your audience, I should be learning from them. So I don't really have anything huge to say to them. In fact, I am learning from them. I'll jump on your show sometimes and just, you know, watch the chat or of course watch the show and your guests and stuff. But I do appreciate you having me on. And I've been a fan of yours and your content, and I do appreciate that. And you know, hopefully we will do something again.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, and I appreciate that because I've watched your stuff. You know, that's how we've connected and stuff is, and that's how it works. Most of the time, you watch each other's content channels, and I felt like some of these I might have cut you off a little too soon. I feel like we could do an episode again sometime on some of these topics, and it was fun, man. I like having people on to get to know them, and that's what this is about. Like I've had some really, you know, good stories on here. I appreciate you sharing, you know, the whole selling the company, what you did before and what you're doing now. So thanks again for coming on, man.
Yeah. And you need to have your dad on. I think we talked about that when you were on my show. So you need to have, bring Pops on, and I can't imagine some of the stories that he has. So anyway,
I'd have to tell him to chill out a little bit, but yeah, we'll get that done soon.
tone it down.
Tone it down, Pops. All right, man. Well,
All right.
like I said, I appreciate you for coming on. Everybody that's watching and listening, I will see you guys next time.